If you're the type of gardener who likes to have a clean, spotless lawn around your home, then a yard full of weeds in the spring can be really frustrating. Most of the weeds that are so noticeable in the springtime are winter annuals. These are weeds that germinate in the fall, they grow a little bit over the winter, and then they seem to just really explode onto our lawns in the springtime. By summertime, they've usually already flowered and set seed, but all of their seeds are still in the lawn waiting to start all over again the next fall. Now, if we have favorable conditions, we can actually start seeing some of these weeds germinate in mid to late September. If we have a period of cool weather and some moisture, we can start getting those weeds coming up, and that's not too far away. Well, these weeds can either be broadleaf weeds like henbit or chickweed, or they can be grassy weeds like annual bluegrass, rescue grass, or Japanese brome. But they can really make our lawns look pretty messy. Well, there are a few things we can do right now to our turf to make sure these winter weeds aren't such a bad problem. First, the most important defense, or the best defense against lawn weeds in general, is a thick, healthy, vigorous turf. If we practice proper mowing, watering, and fertilizing techniques, we can establish a really nice vegetation cover that will keep a lot of light from getting to the soil surface and those germinating weed seedlings. Another thing having a thick vegetation cover on our yards will do is it occupies physical space and it just doesn't leave those weeds very much room to grow. So for this reason, at this time of the year, we recommend raising the mowing height. If we do that to even our warm season lawns like the Bermuda grass or zoysia grass that'll go dormant in the wintertime, it'll still provide a little bit of protection. And the lawns that are mowed at a higher level will keep more weeds from germinating than those that are mowed really low and end up with a pretty thin turf. Well, another thing that we can do this time of the year to our lawns to help battle those winter annual weeds is to add a pre-emergent herbicide, like some of these we've got right here. Some of these are granular type pre-emergence herbicides. Others are wettable powders that we mix with water and spray on. Others are just sprayables that we add to a tank of water and put on the lawn. As the name pre-emergence indicates, they control the weeds before they emerge in the lawn. It also lets us know that these products have to be down on the lawn before the weeds start to come up. The way a pre-emergence herbicide works is that they are applied to the lawn, whether as a granular or as a sprayable. They're then watered in to get really good dispersal, and then it sort of creates a thin barrier or a little poisonous layer in the soil right at or just below the soil surface. And once those weed seeds germinate, the growing point, either the shoot tip or the root tip, comes in contact with that herbicide and it kills the seed. So as you can see, we need to have these on the lawn before those weeds start to come up. And as I mentioned earlier, these weeds can start showing up in mid-September. So just to be on the safe side, we recommend that you put down a pre-emergence herbicide by the first week of September or around Labor Day. Now, if you are going to overseed a fescue lawn or you're going to seed some ryegrass into a Bermuda lawn, you obviously don't want to put down a pre-emergence herbicide because they not only keep the weed seeds from germinating, but they can keep your grass seed from coming up as well. Likewise, after you've put down a pre-emergence herbicide, you don't want to do any aerification, dethatching, or spiking to your lawn because these activities can disrupt that barrier, that little thin poison layer, and start some of those weed seeds to germinate and start to growing. Well, when you're selecting an herbicide, be sure and pick one that is appropriate for the type of turf that you have. And if you have a newly seeded or sodded area, you want to make sure that they won't do any harm in those areas. Also, the type of weeds that you have, whether they're broadleaf or grassy weeds, will determine which type of herbicide you use. So when you're in the garden center, be sure and read lots of the labels and find out all of this information. You could also call your county extension office for a recommendation, or you could go by and pick up one of these fact sheets at the county office. It's controlling weeds in the home lawn. It's a very good fact sheet On the back here it lists several different pre-emergence herbicides and tells the different weeds that they control. You can also access this fact sheet on our website, www.oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. So I highly recommend you check that out. Well, some of these turf pre-emergence herbicides can also be used in our flower beds and our shrub beds, if the label indicates. A product that was developed specifically for this reason is this product, Preen. And it's not registered for turf, it is registered for the flower and shrub beds. This again is a granular herbicide. You put it down, water it in, and then to make sure it's going to work, we need to stay out of those beds. We can't do any tilling, cultivating, or hoeing in those beds, or again, we'll disturb that barrier and it won't work as well. Now, something like this should never take the place of just a regular garden mulch to keep weeds down. But if you have a planting of peonies, it's a good idea to maybe use something like this, because as we talked about earlier in the spring on Oklahoma Gardening, peonies need to have the mulch pulled away from their base during the winter time to allow those buds to get chilled to bloom the next year. So an application of Preen would probably be really appropriate there. Well, if you're a gardener who's been using a pre-emergence herbicide on your lawn or in your garden for years, and more specifically, if you've been using the same herbicide on your garden or lawn for 10 years or more, it's time to switch herbicides. It's a good idea to switch to a different herbicide that has a different mode of action. And that way we can keep those weeds from developing any resistance to the herbicides. We don't want any super weeds showing up out there. Well, if a weed-free lawn in the spring is your goal, be sure and raise your mowing height, create that thicker canopy to block out the light, and just to be on the safe side, put down a pre-emergence herbicide around Labor Day.